So everyone watches movies. Everyone knows about pop culture and media. Most of the time we just sit there and watch it because it's for entertainment purposes. We don't really analyze messages hidden that are in the films that we're watching. Almost all of the time there are portrayals of society and our lives as a whole. Typically there are women in movies, and a lot of the time the dominant narrative of women in movies is very offensive. If you just haven't looked into it very much or really thought about it while you were watching the movie, you probably don't exactly understand how someone can be offended. And I'm not the type to get like butthurt over movies and how society portrays women, because I know who I am and I know plenty of women who disagree with what is portrayed, and you know what, it's fine. You know, if that's how people want to make women out to be like in movies, go ahead. It's just for entertainment. Like, oh, it's always funny to laugh at like the dumb blonde. It's always fun to watch a really badass woman who's in like, you know, a tight costume, you know, like, oh, gotta support her because she's showing off what she got, you know. But a lot of the time it's just like, if you really think into it, it's just offensive because women can never just be out of the box. Like, there always has to be a certain box of genres, and there's rarely ever any counter narratives that are like genuinely unique. I'm all for like the badass women that like tend to get violent. Like, you know, it's entertainment, you gotta be dramatic, so sometimes there'll be violence, blood, fighting, death, and I'm all for a woman who is capable of fighting for herself physically or vocally. But I also don't want to support like super violence and say like, yes, you go girl, kill him. Like, no, that's also inappropriate and an offensive portrayal of women, because that's the crazy girl stereotype. And just every film I could, or TV show I could name, probably has some sort of female stereotype in it. I just want to address that and compare some counter narratives and dominant narratives. A dominant narrative is the viewpoint in which history or some sort of like media culture that is meant to display our society is shown through, and it is the dominant narrative because it is like the main perspective of culture. So it would be like the dominant culture, or how society mainly views something. And then counter narratives are the opposite. They take a very unique perspective on culture or history or just society in general, and they show a point of view that is not shown in dominant narrative. There are so many different stereotypes portrayed in media and films of women and how they act, and generally it's not realistic or accurate or positive, but there are a few good ones out there that are counter narratives. So to dive into stereotypes and dominant narratives, we're basically going to touch on a few examples that are more negative and why they're negative. So the biggest genre of films that include women that portray them in a very weak light tend to be superhero movies. Not so much anymore, because we include women as superheroes now and have gone more into those comics and making them into movies, but older ones like the Spider-Man movie from 2002 make out the main female character to just be a love interest and a damsel in distress. They don't really go much into her personality or character traits at all. And in the Spider-Man movie, the main female character, the love interest, she falls in love with Spider-Man without ever even seeing his face, knowing what he does besides being Spider-Man. She doesn't know anything about him except for the fact that he saved her and continues to save her over and over again, even though he doesn't really know much about her either. And that's really her role. She's just there as a love interest and a woman that needs saving, which is such a typical concept in movies. And the whole damsel in distress character is so overdone and so unrealistic, because no one in real life stands around waiting for someone in a costume to come and save them. And I guess the thought is nice, like having someone to rely on, but it's not realistic, and it certainly would not be all the time and not that drastic or dramatic, which I guess is why it's entertainment, because it's not realistic. But just portraying a woman as someone who needs saving constantly and can't do anything for herself is very offensive. A very similar idea is shown in Pirates of the Caribbean movies, specifically The Curse of the Black Pearl, when Elizabeth comes in. And as much as she's shown to be like intelligent and strong throughout the whole movie, all Jack Sparrow does is save her from some sort of trouble, and it's really redundant, and she's just another damsel in distress, although a bit different because her character is more developed, but her role is just there to be saved. And it's, again, not realistic, and it's about pirates, but women do not sit around waiting for a man to come and save her, because we know better than that and we're stronger than that. And those two movies in particular are probably the worst case of damsel in distress. Then there are the movies in between that still contain stereotypes of women and portray them not in the best light, but overall have a better understanding of reality and personality, and maybe have a semi-decent message in the end. A good example of this would be
You can't wear a tank top 2 days in a row.
We all watched
and
it.
You can only wear your
We all
hair
know what
in a
it's
ponytail
about.
once a week.
It overall has a good
So I
message
guess
about
we
how
picked today.
girls need to stick together
Oh, and we only wear jeans or
and
track
treat
pants
each other
on
with
Fridays.
kindness.
Now, if
So
you
it's
break
to send
any
a
of
good
these
message.
rules,
And although
you
it
can't
had
sit
a
with us at
good
lunch.
ending
Well, I mean, not just you.
with all of the
many of us.
girls apologizing,
If I was wearing jeans
it
today, I
only
would be
goes
sitting
skin
over
deep.
there
It
with
doesn't
our
go
freaks.
into what's really
Oh, we always do it
behind
before we ask someone to eat lunch with us.
feminism
because
and what
you have to
really
be
affects
considerate of the
girls.
rest of the
Mean
group.
Girls
Well, I mean, you wouldn't buy a
only
skirt without asking your friends
touched
first
on
if it
this
looks good on you.
school,
I wouldn't.
this fictional school,
Right.
and the issues
Oh, and
of
it's the
all
same
of
with
the
guys.
girls
Like, you may think you like
talking
someone, but
about each other behind their
you could be
backs
wrong.
and just
I
not
want
being
you to
good
raise your
friends or
hand
good
if you
people
have ever had a
and not
girl
being
say
genuine
something
to each
bad
other.
about you behind
But
your
this is
back.
like one school. They didn't go into how media affects how women
Open
think of
your eyes.
themselves, because it portrays unrealistic
Now,
images
close
of
your eyes
body
again.
types
And this
and
time, I want you to
unrealistic
raise your hand
goals
if you
that
have
don't
ever
apply
said
to
anything about a
everybody,
friend
and
behind her back.
like magazines and websites and social media are often photoshopped,
Okay.
so bodies look a certain way, and this all goes into
It's been some
self-esteem
girl-on-girl
and
crime here.
the need to bully each other. That's what is
Oh,
behind
got to stop
all
calling
of this
each other
bullying
sluts
and
whores.
all
It
the
just makes
gossip
it okay
problems
for
at the
guys
school
to call you
and all
sluts
the
and
clique
whores.
issues.
Who
But
here
of
has ever been
course,
called a
they
slut?
don't delve into that. They just scratch the surface of what feminism is and
Okay,
don't
everybody
go
up.
deep enough
Miss
to the
Norbury
point
has
where I
read
can say
apologies
this
to
is
people
like
that
a
we've hurt in our
positive
lives.
female movie. Another movie that's kind of on the fence between positive and negative lighting is Grease. This is an older movie, so of course certain societal values and messages were deemed okay or not okay, and it's very different than how we think of things now. But I wouldn't consider this bad because
I've been wanting to talk to you for a long
Danny
time.
did like Sandy for who she was. They fell in love over the summer. The only thing holding him back was his friends,
I mean, it really was. I mean,
because
it
they
wasn't
were
me.
supposed
You
to be
gotta know
like
that.
cool and
I mean,
only
if it was me,
date
of course,
or
but
go
it
out with
wasn't me.
certain types of
And
girls, and she was not that.
You see,
So a
Sandy,
lot of
I
people
got this
argue
image,
that
right?
the ending is her changing, so he'll want to be with her. That's not necessarily the case. She is changing how she looks to impress him, but she already has him. He already wants to be with her, but the negative light would be that Danny's friends have enough power over him to the point where he does not want to publicly be seen with Sandy unless she is a certain way. So, although I think the ending isn't positive, it's not completely terrible. Clueless is in the same in-between category because it doesn't really have any besides like, oh, be yourself in the one case scenario. And Although Cher loves shopping and wants to impress boys, I mean, that isn't completely unrealistic. And she's the main character, so it shows more into her life with her relationship with her father and her sort of stepbrother who ends up being her love interest in the end. And it's a really weird movie. It's just meant to be like funny and about high school. In the end, she realized, I mean, it does have a kind of positive message about being yourself. Like, she was trying so hard to impress that one guy who she would never get the attention of because he was gay. But the whole time when she was just natural, without makeup on or just being herself or watching cartoons, she still got the attention of one guy who ends up being, he's actually a really good guy, even though kind of stepbrother, kind of not. Weird situation, but he liked her for who she was instead of all of the superficial stuff. So it's kind of positive, and she is still smart. She works for her grades and is able to negotiate, but sometimes they try to portray her as dumb and how she acts stuck up, which is not a positive light for females in dominant narratives. The last film example in this in-between category, I would have to say, is from Princess Diaries, because although there's some hidden positive messages, like about her grandmother and with her best friend, she is shown to not be able to get her crush's attention until she gets that princess makeover that the movie's so well known for. So overall, Mia is pretty badass, and you know, she's this typical girl turned princess, and her grandma is very independent and a good ruler. Generally, it shows like the makeover stereotype where you don't look good enough to impress that boy that you like, but then once you change your appearance, you get his attention and he ends up liking you. And it's very superficial and not realistic at all. And it's saying that you have to change to get someone's attention, which isn't true. You shouldn't have to do that. If that is true, then it's not worth it. So it's not really empowering in that sense, but it's not the worst movie either, because she's not being saved by anybody. That's why it's in between. One of the most positive movies out there, and definitely a huge counter narrative that is still relevant today, girl boss, empowerment to the female, is Legally Blonde, and the sequel, but we're just focusing on the first one. Although a lot of people can probably find bad things to say about it because Elle originally is going to law school to chase after a guy and get married to him, she's not superficial at all. She works really hard to get into law school, and eventually she realizes she don't need no man and she's better off without him, and she still continues working really hard in law school. And instead of putting down Vivian, she becomes friends with her, and overall her focus is not on male attention after the middle and towards the end, but she is actually very passionate and dedicated once she gets into law, and she just has the will to prove to other people that she's able to do it, because a lot of people didn't believe in her because she seemed so much like pink and fashion and beauty, but that's just part of who she is. Like, that's just what she likes, and that doesn't make her a negative role. She is still very positive and hardworking and intelligent, clearly. She has an eye for details, and her love for beauty and fashion actually helps her in her career, which isn't really realistic, but that's why it's entertainment and it's film. But overall, her help in empowering other women throughout the movie, throughout the sequel, and always being very positive. She is definitely a role model, and this movie is very helpful for me. I watch it whenever I feel down, and it's funny, it has a good message, and the females in it are all very positive by the end, and it really motivates me because she didn't know anything about law, didn't really know that she had a passion for it, but she took her knowledge and she transformed it to help her, and she really likes what she does. She graduated top of her class at Harvard Law, and no one thought she'd ever do it, but there she went and she did it, and I think it is a very positive message. So, in conclusion, most movies can't be labeled as good or bad because it's hard to define something like that when there could be a positive message or there could be a few positive characters, but I'm just trying to focus on the main characters and what is shown, and a lot of it is superficial, and that's what makes up dominant narratives, stereotypes that only go skin deep and don't really go into the personality of characters and only show them as a damsel in distress or a dumb blonde. And women are so strong and so powerful once they put their mind to something, and I really hope in future that this can be shown more in films. I've definitely been seeing a change lately because a lot of these examples are a lot older, but these are just the most helpful to explain my point. So you go, girls. We're here to lift each other up and empower each other and motivate each other and just be positive and not spread hate. So that is all.